أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. Condolences for the martyrdom of Imam Jafar Al-Sadiq alayhi salam, which is on the 25th of Shawwal, which will be Monday night and Tuesday day. When you look at verses of the Quran, you see one of the verses that we have in 22:32, وَمَنْ يُعَظَّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. And whoever honors the signs of Allah, indeed it is the piety of the hearts. Honoring and remembering the signs of God, sha'air, and symbols of God, from the piety of hearts. And you have examples in the Quran. What are, for example, cases of symbols of God? Wal-budun, for example, min sha'airillah, or inna safa wal marwa, or also of the sha'airillah. So the camel that is going to be sacrificed for Hajj, for example, is a sign of God. Or the mountains of Safa and Marwa, which you go back and forth, are of the signs of God. If these are the signs of God, then do we limit these symbols to only, say, a camel and a mountain? Or is religion, for example, is Quran sha'a'irullah, for example? Is Rasulullah, the Prophet of Islam, sha'a'irullah? When Hajj and parts of Hajj are a symbol of God, then obviously the things that are more important than Hajj, which is, for example, the Holy Quran, which is the miracle of Allah, is a sign of God. God's messenger, which comes to teach Hajj, is also a sign in sha'a'irullah. And of course, the Imams and successors of the Prophet would also then be signs and symbols of God. So therefore, we see that we can very logically incorporate Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam from sha'a'irullah, the signs of Allah, because he is an Imam that is divine, that is appointed by God, that has knowledge of God, that three is infallible. So therefore he's a sign of God. He is a hujjat of Allah. He's a symbol of Him. But the verse says, those that remember and those that do ta'zeem and honor these sha'air, it's from taqwa al-qulub. It's from a heart that is pious. Dear brother and sister, there are some that are very indifferent when it comes to Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. When it comes to their martyrdoms, just another day. When it comes to musibat for Ahlul Bayt, when it comes to matam and lutmiyah for Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, they haven't realized and gained ma'rifat yet. They don't have knowledge of imamah. They don't have kamaluddin. They're still limited stuck in the other parts of Islam. The Quran comes to teach us to follow the Prophet. The Quran comes to teach us to follow insan al-kamil, to follow the perfect human being. Because the perfect human being will give you those instructions how to rule the world. The Quran comes and everyone has Quran today. And someone might tafsir it this way, someone might do tafsir that way. But when it comes to the infallible Imam, the Imam says, this is what it means. This is what you have to do. This is how we will bring prosperity to the world. I want to take you to the time of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. Prophet Yusuf was a slave. They sold him. He wasn't a slave by birth. His brothers went and threw him in a well at the age of 9. Some say 9 or 12, but age of 9. And when he was purchased for the amount of money that you purchase a dog, for example, a very cheap price, he was sold. Then because of his piety, Then because of its sincerity, even though there are many temptations during his lifetime, all of the women of the town fell in love with him, wanted Yusuf alayhi salam, and he would say that the prison is better to me than these temptations and what's going on right now. So he wanted to go to prison. When he came out of prison and interpreted the dreams, something very interesting happened. And that is that he interpreted the dream that there will be 7 years of prosperity and then there will be years of famine. So Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam told the king that, look, stock up the harvest that you have for 7 years, stock up this harvest. And he himself the king gave Yusuf, that was a slave, now freed from the prison, he made him an aziz. He made him basically the minister of agriculture and distribution. And how fairly, and what ideas that Prophet Yusuf had to mitigate this famine. He said the farmers, for example, what we have in the books, farmers, farm as much as you can. The king, the ruler, will purchase the rest of it from you. As much as you can harvest. And they stored this harvest until that day came 7 years later. Now they needed it. But what did he do? You guys here living when COVID happened and people were fighting over toilet paper. Imagine that time they were fighting over wheat and how much life was needed. If you did not have wheat, you would starve. But what did Prophet Yusuf do? He had the plan. He mitigated them. He said store it. So he had the idea, the skill. And 2, he had the piety because he's a prophet of God. And he sold it to them for a cheap price, a good price, a fair price. All the way that Yusuf alayhi salam was known for his righteousness. And that his brothers from Canaan, which is modern day Palestine, came all the way to Egypt to find some wheat because there is a big famine throughout that area. So you see, this is how a prophet rules the land with righteousness, mitigates famine. And that is why Kamaluddin in perfection is with the human. And Allah makes us follow the Quran, introduces us, says follow now the infallible. This is all guidance, it's stages of guidance, but the Kamal ad-Din, the final and perfection of Deen is through the infallible leader from God. And He will make it very clear for you. There will be not one question, did you ask Him? And He says, I don't know. He will know the paths, but the problem has always been the followers did not want to submit. They came to Imam Ali alayhi salam, but it was too late. They came years afterwards. After we had the first Khalifa, second Khalifa, third Khalifa. And then at that time they came to him as a Khalifa. Will you be our Khalifa? Not will you be our Imam. That if you command us to go into the fire, we'll go into the fire. Not like that. So therefore, because they did not come with that ideology, and Sayyidah Fatima says this, that Imam Ali alayhi salam, if he was the ruler, he would have turned the world into paradise. He would have brought barakat from the heavens, the barakat of Allah to the people. So we see that the life of Imam Sadiq and the Imams are so important because they are the perfection of religion. They had, Allah gave for us a chance, dear brothers, sisters. They gave us a human being. He didn't make it complicated. He gave the book. And these are the final religion. Therefore, He gave the Prophet and He gave the Imams so they can implement Deen. They can conquer the world. And it would have happened, but we fell short. And it can still happen now with Imam Mahdi, Ajullah Ta'ala Farajah. That's why there's no more important dua than making dua for Imam Zaman. Because everything will be realized when Imam Zaman is come. If you want Quran to be implemented correctly, we have many hufaz of Quran. But we don't have implementation of the Quran. If you want the Quran to be implemented, hifth is very good. But that implementation is more important. Some of the killers of Imam Hussein alayhi salam were hufaz of the Quran. Some of them went to Hajj many times. And they cut the head of Abi Abdullah alayhi salam. They severed the head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Some of them were the most pious of people, of the Khawarij. You would look at them, the Quran they would read, the crying they would do at night. But they made the blood of Ali ibn Abi Talib halal. So completion of religion is with imamah. And that is why over and over we say when it comes to the martyrdoms of the Imams, when it comes to Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, everything we have to give it for them. We have to remember them, cry for them, and this is truly tawfiq. If you want to know if you're guided or not, see if it's the martyrdom of Imam Sadiq, how sad are you? Because look at the narrations. The narrations mention إن سرك أن تكون معنا في الدرجات العلى. If you want to be with us in the high positions من الجنان فاحزن لحزننا. If you want to be with us in our place, our position, be sad with our sadness. When it's the time of our martyrdom, be sad, cry. وافرح لفرحنا, and enjoy when it is time of rejoice. The life of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, if you really want to open it up, you can say that it is the realization of all the teachings of the prophets. Everything that the prophets wanted to say but they could not say happened during the time of Imam Sadiq. Because he lived during a power change. 5 khulafa during when he was Imam for 34 years, 5 of the khulafa from the Umayyads, 2 of the khulafa of the Abbasids he lived. So he was free to teach. And people were ready. The Prophet of Islam, it's a continuation. Some of our leaders talk about the 250-year-old man, because the Prophet and Imams all worked together. The 250 years that we had in the infallible leaders, from the time of the Prophet to the time of Ghaibat, we have an infallible leader now, but that it was present with the people was 250 years. They all worked together. The Prophet of Islam started, was the illah al-muhditha, was this illah that started it all, and the illah that was mubqiyah, that connected and continued with the Imams to the time of Imam Sadiq, a different time of Imam Baqir, Imam Sadiq. It was not a time of Imam Sajjad where he had to teach religion through dua. It was not a time where there's only a handful left of Shia because they killed Imam Hussein alayhi salam and there's nobody left. It's a time that he has 4,000 narrators. 4,000 narrators. Some of our narrators have tens of thousands of ahadith, like Muhammad ibn Muslim, maybe 30,000 hadith from one person. It was the time of the realization of what all the prophets wanted to teach, but people could not handle, people could not understand. And this was not a new religion, obviously. It was just the bayan and explanations of what the prophets and the Quran said. So he opened up knowledge like his father, Imam Baqir, which means opened up and split open knowledge. Imam Sadiq opened and split up knowledge in a way that the world had not seen that knowledge anymore. So therefore we are very in debt. If you look at the hadith, we have how many hadith we have from Imam Baqir, Imam Sadiq. These ahadith dictate the way we live our world, the way we live our lives today. If we did not have these narrators to record these, we would be very off from the teachings of the Prophet of Islam. So we say it is 65 years that the Imam lived, from year 83 Hijrah and 148 Hijri, and that he was the Sheikh of the A'immah, one of the oldest that lived 65 years before his martyrdom, and that you see that he lived, in Imam for 34 years. His virtue, you see, is interesting because some people, they ask, how do you know he's the Imam? And we have narrations from an Al-Kafi that mentions all the Imams' names. After you believe in Imam Ali alayhi salam and the Prophet, and you believe in this line of traditions, you see so many hadith from the Prophet that mentions the 12 Imams by name. But also you see that sometimes the competition, you could say, other schools of thought that were produced instead of, so people would not follow the school of thought of Imam Sadiq. For example, the Maliki school of thought. Malik ibn Anas, who was also supported by the government. And his Mawatta, is his book, was a book that the government wanted to be spread, to be the version or the book of Islam for the people. But you see, Malik ibn Anas, they say, the Sunnis say, when you talk about the stars, the scholars, Malik is like the star. And what does he say about Imam Sadiq alayhi salam? Interesting, this statement is from Tahdhib, or Tahdhib, those that study, different books, from Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. He's one of the main commentators of Sahih Bukhari. He says that, quotes, that Malik ibn Anas, one of the Maliki, the starter of the Maliki school of thought, ما رأت عين ولا سمعت أذن ولا خطر على قلب بشر أفضل من جعفر ابن محمد الصادق اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. He himself has his own madhab. He himself has many followers. He is like the star of the scholars of Ahlul Sunnah. And he says that eyes have not seen, ears have not heard, the heart has not crossed anyone higher and better than Imam Sadiq. From Malik ibn Anas, from Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. In what terms? Ilman, the most knowledgeable. Wa ibadatan, the best worshipper. Wa wara'an, the best in piety. Question to you. If you follow Malik ibn Anas, if you respect him, then why isn't Imam Sadiq alayhi salam in your hadith books? Why your hadith books are filled with people that only saw the Prophet of Islam for a few years, 5,000 or whatever, thousands of hadith from them. Your hadith books are filled with narrators that did bay'ah to Yazid. Your hadith books are filled with narrators that kissed or did bay'ah. They did bay'ah and allegiance to the foot of Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, for example. Some of these narrators that you see that are filled in their books are people that came to Hajjaj, a murderer, and says, man mata, whoever dies without understanding or doing bay'at of his imam, mata jahiliyyah, dies the death of jahiliyyah. So I have to do bay'at to you, Hajjaj, his narrator. He says, do bay'at with my foot. Do bay'at with my foot, just bay'at with his foot. He doesn't do bay'at to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, but he does bay'at to the foot, for example. So you see that this is the calamity that we have. When he says the most knowledgeable, pious, but yet it's not in their books. This is what, when we look at the difference and they call us Ja'fari, it is because of that unparalleled position of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam in teaching. To be teachers of the other madahib, for everyone to respect them. But the question is always, why isn't he in the narration book? Why it wasn't Imam Baghr in the books of narration? Why wasn't Imam Sajjad? Why wasn't Imam Hussein? Why wasn't Imam Hassan? And why wasn't Ali ibn Abi Talib in your books? Barely in their books. That's the minimum of Hadith al-Thaqalain. Hadith al-Thaqalain is Kitabullah wa Itrati. One of the recent Ahl Sunnah scholars by the name of Nasir al-Albani, he's Salafi. And he quotes, he went through all the hadith of Ahl Sunnah and made Sahih and Da'if, Sahih and Da'if. He didn't touch Bukhari and Muslim, out of respect, he says. But then he comes across Hadith al-Thaqalain, that Allah, the Messenger of Allah, puts two weighty things, and he says that it is Quran and the family. These two weighty things that he leaves for us. He says if anyone rejects Hadith al-Thaqalain, Salafi. He says he doesn't even know ilm al-Hadith. He doesn't have knowledge of Hadith even. Because Hadith al-Thaqalain is so strong. Question, if the Prophet left family and Quran, why isn't it in your Hadith book? Where are they? So we see that we are, alhamdulillah, very happy to come to Quran and the Prophet through Ahlul Bayt. Because they preserved. And it is the only way that makes sense. How can you have the final prophet, final messenger, seal of messengers, come for only 23 years to teach people, and then that's it? When all the other religions were changed, when all the other prophets' religions changed before? Yes. So why wouldn't they change this one? They would change it. So therefore you need, if it's the final religion, another prophet cannot come and do and rectify and do Islah. There has to be imams, infallible imams with knowledge from Allah, appointed by Him, that preserves the teachings. Because it's the final, to the day of judgment, because it's the final religion of God. So therefore we see the life of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam is a very life that we're very proud of. And his martyrdom for us is very heavy. We see how much importance he gave on hadith, on narrations. For example, he says, no, manazil an-nas ala qadr rawayatihim anna. Do you want to know who has a high position? Know how many narrations they know from us. How many hadith they know from us. Then you'll know their position. Or you say, for example, hadithun fi halal wa haram ta'khuduhu min sadiq khayrun laka min ad-dunya wa ma fiha min dhahab wa fidda. One hadith from a trustworthy source is better than the dunya and what's in the dunya in gold and silver. One hadith. So if you want to see how close you are to Imam Sadiq, put yourself, for example, in the shoes of those students of Imam Sadiq and what they did for Imam Sadiq and how they studied under him. One of them is Muhammad ibn Muslim. He lived in Kufa, he lived in Iraq, but he loved Imam Sadiq. He truly loved him. You know, one of the nights, usually those, if you study history, they don't travel at night. You don't start traveling at night. Usually, even today, unless because of traffic, it wasn't because of traffic back then, but you don't start a dangerous journey from another part of the world to another part at night. But Muhammad ibn Muslim, this companion of Imam Sadiq, I saw from Iraq, to go to Medina, said, I just have to start this journey tonight. I just can't see it. I can't just wait to see Imam Sadiq. This is the love that these narrators have, that we owe them so much because they narrated thousands of hadith. So he just goes, starts his journey in the middle of the night, reaches Medina, and becomes sick. He rushed. He put so much pressure on himself. He rushed to see the Imam. It takes, days to go to Medina. He's there, and it's mentioned that he is too sick to see the Imam. He becomes sick. And the Imam, though, knows from the knowledge of Imam, knows that his companion Muhammad ibn Muslim is in town. He sends someone for him. He sends someone for him and with a medicine for him. And he says, drink this and come to the Imam. He's surprised. He says, what do you mean I'm sick? How can I drink this and come to the Imam? I'm really sick. He drinks it. Immediately he gets shafa and he comes to see the Imam. He comes to see him and expresses obviously the love of meeting the Imam all the way from Iraq to Medina. And after meeting the Imam, he's inquiring, what is this? What is this drink that you gave me? It cured me right away. And the Imam mentions that this is some of the actual turba, dirt of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And he takes some of this turba for his family. He says, what is this for myself? But the Imam also teaches them that you can't just take it and put it in your pocket like this. There's adab, there's a way so that effect doesn't leave. Because Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was one of those that visited Iraq and visited Imam Hussein alayhi salam, visited Imam Ali. I don't know here if you know this or not, but the grave of Imam Ali was hidden from us. Was hidden. Until the time of Imam Sadiq, he showed us where Imam Ali was. Because of a fear of his enemies, they opened different graves in different places so they would not come to disrespect the body of Imam Ali alayhi salam. But Imam Sadiq, after viewing that it is safe, he showed the grave and shrine in the burial place of Imam Ali. So see that Muhammad ibn Muslim, in the way that he learned knowledge, was in a way that sometimes they would ask, Abdullah ibn Abi Ya'fur would ask, if I can't reach you to Imam Sadiq, what do I do? He says, ask Muhammad ibn Muslim if he can't reach me. Imagine such a position as a companion that the Imam says, I can't reach you, so ask him instead. He studied well, he learned well. But you see the humility of some of these companions, that there is a incident that when Muhammad ibn Muslim was a witness in court, and he and someone and one of his other companions come, and they enter the court for witnesses, they said, these are the Ja'fariyan, for example, these are the Ja'faris. And then they say that Muhammad ibn Muslim starts crying. He says, why? So he's the Ja'faris. He says, where am I and where is Imam Sadiq to call me Ja'fari? He began to cry. He said, the position of Ja'far ibn Muhammad and me that I am attributed to Imam Sadiq, there's such a big gap. Because whoever would see Imams, they would detest themselves. There's no way that they can compare themselves to the Imam. There's no comparison. So dear brother, dear sister, one of the duties that we have when it comes to the life of Imam Sadiq is to study his hadith. Study so many narrations he has. Spent some time in research his hadith. Look at his sayings. Look at Tuhaf al-Uqul is a good source. Look at the narration he does to Ibn Jundab, for example. And I'll say one of that narration. And other narrations and books that are from Imam Sadiq. Imam Sadiq not only was knowledge, important part of his life, also helping the poor and helping those that were in need was an important part of his life. He would take bread, meat, money carried over his shoulders in a pouch and would give it to the poor. They didn't recognize him because the Imams were ma'roof for sadaqatul sir. They would hide themselves. And even there's an account that once he would tell some of his companions to put 50 dinars and to give it to a man of Bani Hashim, not himself. 50 dinars is 50 golden coins. And this person, he comes, Imam Sadiq gave him the money. He comes and gives this person as a medium, says, you give it to him. And the beggar, or the poor person, asks, who is this from? He says, of course that person doesn't answer. He says, who is it from? He says, where did you get this? He says, may God give you a good reward, because this person, every year, whoever it is, he's sending this means of living. For 1 year, I live off this money. May God reward you. But Ja'far ibn Muhammad doesn't even give me 1 dirham. When Allah rewards you, you've given me 50 dinars, but Ja'far ibn Muhammad gives me nothing. It's from Bani Hashim. Imam Sadiq was giving him that money, but he didn't want to be known. And he was giving his amount of money to live. But he did not bother telling that person it was me, or tell him it's from me so he stops being angry at me. They were so humble in the eyes of Allah, not to be seen. And that is when you look at narrations about sincerity, that how important it is for those people that are not seen. And that's what riyā is, for example, or ikhlas, you can say. Ikhlas or sincerity is that you don't wish to be thanked by the people. Imagine just living your life in a way that you do things for masjid, for family, for Allah, for community, and nobody ever knows it's you. Imagine how good that is and how rewarding that is. There are many people today that they do things and you never know who they are, because that ikhlas is higher than that action itself. That sincerity that you don't talk about. Sometimes it's good to encourage others. Hey, we're going to get some money for the masjid together to encourage. But sometimes not putting your name, and only Allah knows. That's very important. That's how Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was. And you see the love that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam had for Ahlul Bayt. You see, for example, when it comes for his dua, لِلزَّوَّارِ al-Hussein alayhi salam, he has this dua that he prayed for the visitors of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Allahumma arham tilka al-uyun allati jarat dumu'uha rahmatan lana. He says, oh Allah, have mercy on those eyes who weep over us due to their companionship towards us. He says, Allah have rahmah on those eyes that cry for us. Warham tilka al-qulub allati jaza'at wahtaraqat lana. And those eyes, those hearts that are in fire, inflamed, that are, in pain for us. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam is making dua for the zawar of Imam Hussein, whose eyes are crying, whose hearts are on fire. Warham tilka sarkhata allati kanat lana. Sometimes people say, what do you do? This azadar is so loud. Why do you yell? But this is actually one of the proofs. It says, Allah, warham tilka sarkha. Sarkha means to yell, to scream, right? Sarkha. Sarqa means to call, to scream. May Allah have rahmah on those screams, those yells, that when a person is on fire, their hearts are on fire for Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, that is for us. May Allah have rahmat on that, that scream, that yell. So therefore we see how much the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam respected and loved Ahlul Bayt, and that's how we should be. I'm going to end with a tradition of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam for us to learn and to implement, and that is this narration that we have. Yabna Jundab, al-khayru kulluhu amamak, wa inna shar kulluhu amamak. Goodness, all of it, is in front of you. Al-khayru kulluhu amamak. All of goodness is in front of you. What does it mean all of goodness is in front of you? Khayr is in front of you. What does it mean? وَإِنَّ الشَّرَّ كُلَّهُ أَمَامَكَ. And shar is also in front of you. Or imamuk. What does it mean that all of shar is in front of you? It continues the hadith. وَلَن تَرَى الْخَيْرَ وَالشَّرَّ إِلَّا بَعْدَ الْآخِرِ. You will not even see good or evil until the hereafter starts. Today we live in a time that people are very confused, and they see people that are hungry, people that are starved, people that are in misfortune. Or sometimes that misfortune happens to me and I lose my faith. I say, can life get any worse than this? But this hadith is saying that's not even bad yet. That's not even shar yet. You haven't even seen shar. That is a sample, just a sample of shar. That's just a part of evil. You say life is good, and it's good. You have a good family, you have good income, you're healthy. Life is great, but it's not khair yet. Khair and shar, Imam says, amamak, is in front of you. It's not here. And that is the confusion that has always caused some philosophers and theologians. And they couldn't understand, God, why do you do this to people? God, why do you? Well, wait. Wait for the hereafter to happen. You have only seen one part. You have to look at the other part of the equation. Wait for the day of judgment. Wait for the hereafter. And you see that all of it will be in balance because God is adil. God puts everything in their place. There are two people. One is rich in narration, one is poor. Both going to heaven. They see each other on the day of judgment, and this narration says in the future. They will see each other on the day of judgment. The poor person says that, God, you didn't give me money for me to spend it rightfully or wrongfully. I didn't have anything to spend. God, you never gave me honor to have to be adil or not to be adil. I never had power. And then Allah says in this narration that, Sadaqa abdi, if I remember right. This abd of mine, slave of mine, is right. He's correct. He didn't have money. He didn't have honor. Go to heaven. But that same rich person, they're both going to heaven. He is there question and question and question and question. It takes him a while. Some of the manazil al-akhirah, each one, which is say about 50, each one can take 1,000 years. 1,000 years. And then after his long, questioning, he finally sees that person in heaven, and heaven has made him change his look. It looks much different. It doesn't look like that poor person or that person used, when you get fed a lot, you start getting a little chubby, or I could assume he was looking much healthier and chubby or whatever. And he says, I don't recognize you. Who are you? He says, you're basically has a conversation. I don't recognize you. He says, I'm that same person that was with you. We started at the same time. Our judgment was at the same time. And he realized that Allah, because that person was poor and that other person was rich, He made him go through very fast. I said one of the stages could be 1,000 years of waiting, and that waiting is not good, obviously. You don't want to just wait there in the hereafter, because, mahshar, one of the parts of the hereafter, you're looking for shade. It's hot. It says nar. You're looking for shade. So therefore, you see, everything is in place. Not that this narration is saying that poor people or rich people are bad. No. Because Imam Ali alayhi salam at the time was very wealthy. Very wealthy because he produced a lot. He worked hard. But he would spend, we're talking about spending. He would spend very, very, very little. He would put his food in a way, his bread, and seal it. So nobody would take this oat bread and put oil to make it soft. He would seal, they say, his oat bread in a way that it would be rough and hard, and he would tell people, this is not for you. So he had a very large income because of the farming he did, the wells that he had in Medina, even some by the Red Sea, for example. Other areas he had people do. Lots of income. But when he would spend for himself, he did minimal, because that spending you will be asked. Why did you spend it there? Why did you do that? Because Allah is giving us the rizq. So you see, the day of judgment, all of evil and good is in front of us, meaning that you have not even seen anything yet. And the problem that some of the theologians and some of the philosophers have, they say that I believe in a good God, but why is this happening? You say, well, look, everything will be made up in the hereafter. Even, each breath that you take, some of the narrations talk about each nafas, each breath I take. Is it a breath that I was doing sin, or was it a breath, for example, remembering God? Each breath will be asked from us. So therefore, this advice that we have from the Imam means that don't look at the world today, it is a sample. Look at how long the punishments of the hellfire will be, how long the joys of the hereafter will be, and work for that. Work for that. The world is good to work for, okay. But as long as it's a medium, don't give up that hereafter where actually you will see real good and real evil, because the quality will be much different there. And the time period, which is infinity, will be much different. So even if a person is punished every day in this world, it's like a blink of an eye, because you're comparing it to infinity. So I finish with saying the tradition that, al-khair kulluhu amamak wa inna shar kulluhu amamak wa lan tara al-khair wa shar illa ba'd al-akhirah لأن الله جل وعز جعل الخير كله في الجنة وكله في الجنة والشر كله في النار لأنهما الباقيان. He has made khair in heaven, in the paradise, and made shar in the hellfire, because they will be everlasting. So the last thing that we have is that we don't sacrifice our hereafter, which is real potential of harm, real khair, harm, and real benefit, for a world that's going to last for a very, very short time. While the day of judgment, is approaching us every time. Every day we're awake, we're closer to our judgment. Every day God gives us life, another day we're closer to our own judgment. So don't sacrifice things for this world, for the hereafter. We look at the life of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, we do tawassul to this Imam, and we say, Ya Abu Abdullah, Ya Jafar ibn Muhammad, Ayyuha Sadiq, Ya ibn Rasulullah, Ya Hujjatullahi ala khalqih, يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. They came to the house of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, the house that held life's secrets. His house was ordered to be set on fire. One of the homes that was set on fire, according to history, was the home of Imam Jafar Al-Sadiq, this great teacher, this great Imam, 4,000 transmitters of hadith. But they could not take it anymore, and they set fire to his house. But that was not the only time they set fire to Ahlul Bayt's house. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, they set fire to your mother's house, Fatima Zahra, at the same time. Same city, a different time. when they came with the torches to attack the house that held Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, Imam Ali, Sayyidah Fatima. What a beautiful house. They came and they said, bring Ali alayhi salam to us, or else we'll set this house on fire. Your house became like the house of Fatima, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. But you didn't have to witness attack on your family. Imam Ali alayhi salam had to witness the attack on his family as if he was there, as if we were there when they came to attack the house of Sayyidah Fatima. I apologize, Imam Zaman, but they came, وَوَرَكَلَ الْبَابَ بِرِجْلِهِ. He came and he kicked open the door. Who was behind this door? فَرَدَّهُ عَلَيَّ وَأَنَا حَامِلٌ. The narrator is Sayyidah Fatima. He threw the door upon me and I was pregnant. A time of dignity and honor. Rasulullah, Sayyidah Fatima would kiss your hands. Sayyidah Fatima, Rasulullah would give his own place to you. But they threw the door, he threw the door upon you and you were pregnant. وَالنَّارُ تُسْعَرُ. The fire was blazing. What did they do in Medina? What did they do to Sayyidah Fatima? وَالنَّارُ تُسْعَرُ وَتَسْفَعُ وَجْهِي. And my face was scorched. I will not read the rest. You know what else happened to Sayyidah Fatima, that today we call her As-Siddiqa Ash-Shahida, the very truthful and the Shaheed. Ya Allah, we ask you because of the honor of Imam Sadiq, the honor of Sayyidah Fatima, inshallah, protect us from the hellfire, inshallah. Protect us from shar kullu, for all of evil. Grant us heaven, inshallah. Grant us knowledge that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam taught. Grant us the ability to act upon the knowledge of Imam Sadiq. Help our youth. Our youth are struggling these days. Help them to make the right choices. Give them, inshallah, make them of the musallin. Make them of those that always do salat. Give them wilayat and love of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Cure our sick, forgive those that have passed away. May Allah answer all of your du'as because of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Grant you all of your hawa'ij, dunya, akhirat, whatever it is, inshallah. In our most important hajat, the faraj of Imam al-Zaman with his salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ma salli ala Muhammad. Muhammad wajjal farajahu. We have anyone in the IT booth?